picking up where Mark left off, a lot of what we've explored is not necessarily just these asymmetries in information. I mean, there's a sense of sort of obviousness to developed places in the world, having greater representation on Wikipedia, but more sort of digging deeper into, first of all, what are the consequences of this from a larger sort of social perspective, but also what are the processes that led to this situation in the beginning? And so I'm going to cover a couple of those. First, I want to say happy birthday to Wikipedia. I've known Wikipedia for a while. Back then, I didn't realize you weren't supposed to author and sign your name in the articles itself. That's right. So Wolfram Alpha tells me we've known each other for 13 years and 2 months, so not bad. And we still don't have access to the world's knowledge. Now, poor Jimmy Wales said this. He didn't say Wikipedia was supposed to be the site where it happens, although it does kind of get implied in a way. But the access to this knowledge is really important and is still incredibly uncertain. So I had, the last Wikipedia talk I gave was at the Erasmus Prize in the Netherlands, where the editors of Wikipedia won the Erasmus Prize this year. Past winners include, Daniel Dennett and Claude Lévi-Strauss, great philosophers and stuff. And so this was a real feather in the cap for the Wikipedia audience. On the day of the presentation, or the day before, there was a really unfortunate terrorist attack that happened in Cameroon. And so a Boko Haram suicide bomber killed some people in Cameroon. How many did they kill? We're not sure. Did they kill 6? Did they kill 9? Did they kill 10? Where did they kill them? Did they kill them in a town? Well, they killed them in Fotokol. And so what can we see about Fotokol? Well, it's a commune, it's a town, it's a city. It's really actually quite ambiguous. What happens is actually Fotokol is a large region in Cameroon that includes multiple towns and hamlets. The population of that town differed on Wikipedia than it did from the official statistics. And the official statistics themselves were on a very poorly formatted page. It was hard to get to. And as a consequence, the journalists' stories, if you want to dig deep into those, said all sorts of things. They weren't sure if it was a town. They weren't sure how many people were there. They weren't sure if the 9 people or 10 people dead were of 400. Were they of 40,000? It really depends. But what happened overall is very obvious that journalists were going to Wikipedia for getting facts about this place, and their needs were not being met. Well, as we heard already, one of the best ways to get these needs met is to have local people doing their own editing on Wikipedia. And as we could see from this sort of color-coded bi-language map, there is evidence, certainly, that people do edit locally. They edit within their own regions, and they prefer to edit within their own regions to some extent. Here we have the Persian, as you probably can see the yellow here, most of the Persian articles happening around Iran, and French in continental Europe, English in the Anglosphere, as well as obviously dominating everywhere else, and so forth. Which is, again, really important because, as I sort of implied there, Wikipedia doesn't just end up on Wikipedia. It's not just the top Google search, but it's a generative platform that then works its way into all sorts of places. And so if it's absent on Wikipedia, in many cases it's also absent elsewhere in the world. Not just that there's language variations, but some of these places are hidden. This creates uncertainty. This creates a sense of foreignness and otherness when we're curious about somewhere else in the world. If it's not on Wikipedia, it tends to be very hard to access. I'm going to skip that a little bit. That's just the various language versions that are the most popular, but just briefly we can see English is not necessarily the most popular around the world. A lot of places have taken on their own local areas with gusto. So we can... one of those areas in particular in the Middle East is Israel. As we can see here, this is a sort of a 3D perspective map of the MENA region. And the height is the number of edits, and Israel sort of dominates the editing in this region. Quite obviously, Iran coming in second. But if we don't just look at, say, a map that's descriptive, we have a place, and so, you know, more here is darker, or more here is higher, but actually look at flows. Who's writing where? We actually come to a rather unfortunate conclusion. And that conclusion is, we've described it as a form of informational magnetism. So here's one of two little network maps. I'll talk you through this one real quickly. This is a network of regions in the world. And so, or actually I'll come over here by the mic. This is a network of regions in the world. And this is normalized for the, for the target region. So let's say we have a look here at Europe. All the large, the width of these is because these are the width of where the edits are coming from elsewhere in the world. So for Europe, a lot of edits are coming from MENA. For Europe, a lot of edits are coming from sub-Saharan Africa. North America, 88% of edits come from within North America, but then the other 12%, well, they come from sub-Saharan Africa and so forth. But what we find here, when we look at it this way, this starts becoming a bit distressing. Not just where we receive edits, but where they're sent. The MENA region only receives from within the MENA region 36% of their edits. These people actually send most of their edits to North America. They're not actually writing about their own region. They're writing about North America, the place that we clearly saw has already so many edits. They're also sending their edits to Europe and sending their edits to Asia. So this is an area that doesn't get many edits to begin with, the same for sub-Saharan Africa, and yet they're sending most of their edits away to other regions that are already highly active. And now to put that even further in perspective, this is the number of within-region edits in millions. They don't have many edits to begin with, and yet they're still sending them away to other areas that are more actively represented. Well, we looked at what prompts editing, and one of the things that came out front and center in our models was broadband. This is not GDP necessarily, not area or population necessarily, but broadband access seems to be an incredibly strong predictor. And it has a curvilinear effect depending on the model that you look at, which is to say it really picks up steam as communities pick up Wikipedia as a community rather than just as a series of individuals. But we do have to say it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. And there are some reasons why it's not sufficient. I mean, number one, we'll have a look and see in the future now that we have a great deal more connectivity within Africa, but we still have cultural issues to contend with. And those issues, going back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, have a lot to do with sources and credibility. So when Mark and Heather and I and some others were in Egypt, we heard a funny story about an obelisk in Egypt that had the wrong geocode. The geocode said it was over here, and it was like literally like, 50, 100 kilometers over here. And then they got in a little wiki war over this, and the editor in Egypt was like, no, really, it's like literally outside my window. And their person like, yeah, but I have it in a book. It's like, and so, out the window couldn't be sourced, but the book could. And so there was a little back and forth here because one was considered a legitimate source and one wasn't. And what that did is sort of demoralize someone saying, well, my obvious experience is not being legitimated here. Now, the little war could have been avoided by saying, well, what you should do is take a photograph of it with a geotag, put it on Wikimedia Commons, and then that will be an official source, and then you can, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't do that. They were like, no, I have a source, it's a book, go do your thing. And so I'm surprised this person had the perseverance to continue with Wikipedia, but he did. So to summarize, Wikipedia doesn't reflect the world, but reshapes it. It's a generative platform that helps inform how we communicate with each other. Its representation varies, and the underrepresented places actually reinforce this variation through informational magnetism. Now, I will say the World Bank came out with a report only a day or two yesterday, I believe, suggesting that the internet may in fact reinforce pre-existing inequalities, and they literally could have taken a page straight from our article. In fact, I think they might have. We should check that. Yeah. But based on our research, it's clear that we need better treatment of newcomers, more respect for local sources, and broadband connectivity to help move representation forward. So here's some references. I can make these slides available to people, but at least we'll have them on the screen for the astute. And I just want to thank you, and I'll hand it over to Heather.